Lieutenant Gary Schneck, who is the commander of the Macon County Sheriff's Department Special Investigations Unit, and Assistant District Attorney Lance Leonard, who is going to talk about some of the crime prosecutions. And Melissa Dowder on the far left is a drug-free communities program. She's also a lot of the wheels behind the AOD partnership. She'll be discussing the campaign and how you can get involved. With that, we are going to have, after the speaker, we'll open up to questions by the panelists, and we'll all be around afterwards if anybody should have any additional questions. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Doug.
Good morning. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the AOD Partnership for asking me to come and speak on this very urgent topic. For those of you who are unfamiliar, WASA Health Services is the area medication-assisted treatment program that specializes in the treatment of heroin and other opiate addictions. As a result of the work at WASA Health Services, I thought it was critical to share some of the statistics that we have gathered for you today. During the fourth quarter of 2012, WASA Health Services admitted 76 patients. Of those newly admitted patients, approximately 70% reported a history of IV heroin use, and nearly half were WASA residents. Of those 76 new admits, nearly 40% were between the ages of 18 to 25 years old. Of those 18 to 25-year-olds admitted, approximately 80% had a history of IV heroin use. The average age that they began using drugs was 13 years old, with an average history of drug use being 8 years. These are staggering statistics. The fact is that heroin and opiates are equal opportunity addictions. The typical person is not what we see, somebody living under a bridge, somebody passed out in the alleyway, as we may often see portrayed on television. No, instead we're seeing more and more upper middle class families. We are seeing more and more upper middle class families being torn apart by this addiction. As well, we are seeing more and more adolescents, 16 and 17 years old, who are using IV heroin. These children are engaging in extremely risky behaviors, including the sharing of needles. As I've worked with the families of these kids, their parents have said, we did everything right. Yet here they are, without warning, being thrust into the nightmare of addiction. But what does this mean to our community? It means our children and our public health are at risk. We are seeing a significant increase in Hep C and HIV positive testing in our young people. This translates into significant costs for our healthcare system, our legal system, and our taxes. But even more importantly, this addiction is destroying the lives of these children and their families. These families have not asked for this disease, nor does anyone deserve it. Parents, these are our babies, and they're dying as a result of this addiction. If you don't believe these drugs are in our schools, ask your kids. The fact is that none of us are immune to or unaffected by the disease of addiction. Addiction is insidious, it's sneaky like a thief in the night. Addiction is like a tornado that's ripping through our families and destroying everything in its path. And if we let it, it can and will devastate our entire community. We can no longer bury our heads in the sand and pretend that this monster doesn't exist. The fact is that heroin and other opiates are in our schools, in our neighborhoods, and in our community. Therefore, we are called to act as parents, friends, neighbors, and a community. As just like the founders worked together to build this community, so too do we need to work together to protect our children and our community. And to do so, we need to be proactive. We need to get involved and intervene before our kids get involved in drugs. We need to be talking to our children at every opportunity about the dangers of drug use. We need to be a healthy role model, role modeling healthy coping skills for our children so that they can manage the stressors they're facing today. And we need to get involved in their lives and to know what they're doing. From a treatment perspective, for those who are already caught in the throes of this addiction, treatment works. However, we see far too many young people who are unemployed and without insurance seeking treatment, yet they cannot access it due to the lack of funding. This is unacceptable. Every person seeking treatment is someone's child. They are valued and loved. Therefore, it's vital that we as a community ensure that everyone and anyone who is seeking treatment, including those that are under 18 years of age, can access it so they too can push back against drug abuse. Thank you for the press for helping us get this message out. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for coming.
Thanks, Deb. I'm going to turn this over to John Larson, medical examiner.
Good morning. Thank you for coming today. This is an issue that is impacting our community, and it's impacting our community now, but it has been increasing over the past couple of years. Not only is heroin and other drug abuse impacting our community as far as an increased rate of crime and an increased pressure on public health, people are dying. Deaths from heroin and other drug abuse has increased over the past 3 years. In Marathon County, in 2010, we had 3 overdose fatalities. In 2011, we had 8 overdose fatalities. In 2012, we had 6 overdose fatalities. In 2010, none of these fatalities were heroin related. In 2011, 3 of the 8 were heroin related fatalities. In 2012, 4 of the 6 were heroin related fatalities. This year, 2013, at this point, we have 3 heroin related fatalities. Another part of this problem is that the users, the people that are addicted to heroin, they don't know exactly what they're getting when they buy heroin. The drug dealers have no standards for potency. They cut the heroin with other substances. The people that are injecting this substance into their bodies do not know what they are injecting. This is a part of the disease of addiction. And addiction requires treatment. And treatment requires commitment. Commitment from the addicted, commitment from the community. And we all know that treatment requires resources. This is a community issue. And this issue needs to have a commitment from the community to solve this problem that we face. These people are dying from heroin overdose. These are our children. These are young adults. These are our friends. These are our neighbors. These are our brothers. These are our sisters. I ask you to please help us with our commitment to push back against drugs. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And now Chief Jeff Ardell.
Good morning. Wausau is similar to most other Wisconsin cities as it relates to the increase in heroin, opiates, meth, and other illegal drugs. However, the Wausau community has been severely impacted specifically by the increase of heroin over the last 2 years. On a weekly basis, officers are investigating incidents which are fueled by heroin use and abuse. Incidents like thefts, garage break-ins, domestic calls, counterfeit bills, stolen vehicles, vehicle accidents, vehicle fatalities, shots fired, prostitution, home invasions, aggravated assaults, burglaries, robberies, drug overdose calls, drug overdose deaths, and homicides. All of these incidents have been driven by the use and abuse of heroin and other illegal drugs. A closer look at some of the higher profile cases in the last couple of years show that there is a drug component that played a significant role in decision making for those responsible. And I just want to highlight a couple of those, or a few of those incidents that we have been dealing with, high profile incidents. Just last month, April of 2013, murder investigation of Tong Hang produced information that the suspect, Hu Tao, had a history of meth use and used meth for 2 straight days after he committed the murder. October of 2012, Stephanie Lowe is reported missing. The investigation indicates that Stephanie was murdered. We have not located her body, but we continue to investigate this crime. The investigation also revealed that the sale and distribution of illicit drugs was a significant factor in Lowe's disappearance. September 2012, local gun store was burglarized where 4 guns were stolen. A few days after that, a gun store in Lincoln County was burglarized and 50 guns were stolen. The investigation revealed and identified about roughly 27 people that have been associated with these stolen weapons. A young man from Wausau, Christian Peterson, was killed by the Eau Claire Police Department when he failed to lower one of the loaded stolen guns that he had from Wausau. Ricky Vu was arrested and charged with murder when he shot and killed Lee Zhang in Weston with one of the stolen guns. Another individual in California was arrested for murder, again with one of the stolen guns from these burglaries. These individuals have been responsible for numerous burglaries, home invasions, car thefts, and other crimes. And all of them are meth users, and most of them admitted to being addicted to meth. March 2013, Michael Dixon died in a car accident on Thomas Street with his 4-year-old son as a passenger. Michael struggled with addiction, and heroin was found in his system when his car crashed. March 2013, suspect charged with numerous house burglaries and garage break-ins. After he was arrested the first time and placed in jail, he's out on bond. He admitted that he was addicted to heroin. While he was out on bond, committed more burglaries and was in the process of stealing guns when he was caught again with heroin on his person. April 2012, four industrial air conditioning units were recovered in a garage, local garage. A total of 9 units were reported stolen, averaging between $5,000 and $8,000 a piece. Suspects admitted to being meth addicts and stole the units to disassemble for scrap metal for a couple $100s. December 2011, approximately 40 cases of counterfeit bills and check fraud with a group of local individuals who heavily used meth. Shots fired calls have increased dramatically in the last couple of years. Investigation usually provides that a drug ripoff or an attempted drug ripoff is the cause of the shots fired. Numerous prostitution cases in the area have been proven to have a very strong influence of drugs. In the past 18 months, since October of 2011, Wausau police have been involved in 79 incidents of heroin and 55 incidents involving meth. We've already had 2 overdose deaths this year in the city of Wausau and another 2 near overdose deaths. This document here, which you can pick up on the table outside, has a short summary of all of the heroin and meth incidents in the last 18 months. These are just a few examples of the impact that heroin, meth, and other drugs are having on our community. Drug addiction knows no boundaries. Addiction does not care about a person's status in the community, their profession, their salary, their IQ, or their race. We see the power of addiction destroy lives on a regular basis. This is a community problem which will require a community response. We ask for partners in the community to help identify drug use, drug dealing, and problem houses so that we can hold those people accountable and prevent further crime and destruction. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. I can echo Jeff's sentiments from our department too. We've been dealing with these issues, and it impacts crime in the entire region. It's not just in the city of Wausau, it's all through the Wausau metro area. Turn this over to Lieutenant Schneck from the Special Investigations.
I probably don't need a mic, but I'll use it anyway. I'll tell you a little bit about the Special Investigations Unit and what we do, what we're tasked with doing. It's a combined unit of officers from the Marathon County Sheriff's Department, City of Wausau Police Department, and the Everest Metro PD. We've had that partnership for several years. Just want to let you know that the illicit drug use, the heroin use, is not just a City of Wausau problem. It's a county problem, it's a community problem, it's a regional problem. And we're kind of at the front of that problem as far as investigating these types of cases, trying to identify who the large distributors are in the area, working every day with the other police agencies. We work on a regular basis with other federal and state investigative agencies also. Drug dealers don't know jurisdictional boundaries like we do, like we're used to. It doesn't stop at the City of Wausau limits or the County of Marathon limits. It goes to the other problem areas out to the different counties. We work with them on a daily basis. When we started seeing the influx of heroin into the Wausau community and the Marathon County community in 2010, there was a reformulation of the synthetic opiates, the oxycodone, Oxycontin, that type of thing, where they put a time release coating on the tablets where it took longer to absorb into the system to get that high. We didn't realize at that time what an opiate problem that we have in this community until they started reformulating those types of drugs. And almost within a week after they did the reformulation of the drugs, we started seeing heroin show up here in Wausau. I've been involved in the Sheriff's Department. I've worked there for 30 years. I was an investigator in the unit back in the 90s. We never saw heroin. It wasn't an issue. Maybe once or twice we would see heroin show up in the community. Almost within the week or two after that reformulation of the Oxycontins, it started exploding on the scene up here. And it's not just Wausau, it's all the other communities our size. Our source cities are places like Chicago, the Twin Cities, Milwaukee, but then Wausau's also become a hub for the northern part of the state. So everything is centered here and moves to the northern part of the state. And we are working, I just want to let you know that we are working diligently with the other police departments, other sheriff's departments in the region to do the enforcement. One thing I can say that Marathon County, the Special Investigations Unit, that we have probably done more major federal investigations in the last couple of years than all in the history of Marathon County. And we have been very successful in the prosecutions of some of these larger scale dealers that we've been trying to identify. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Turn over to Assistant District Attorney Lance Leonard. He's going to talk about, he ends up with all these issues that we bring to him, so we'll let him speak on how he deals with these.
Good morning. As they said, I'm the Assistant District Attorney in Marathon County tasked with prosecuting the vast majority of the felony drug trafficking crimes. Work very closely with Gary, with officers from the Wausau Police Department as well as the Everest Metro Police Department. Really, I think it was rather poignant that this meeting was held today when yesterday in Marathon County in initial appearances we had an individual appear charged with first-degree reckless homicide in connection with a lead-biased drug overdose case based on a delivery of heroin. This is a problem that we continue to see in this county, and it's easy to look at those offenses to try to draw from those crimes to say how big the problem is, but really as you even look further down the court docket, yesterday we saw 2 additional initial appearances for people charged with delivering heroin where the person overdosed but did not pass away. So this is a problem that I see in court every day. And really when I look at my statistics for the crimes that I've prosecuted in the last 6 years that I've been here, I can tell you that in preparation for this meeting today, I looked at our case numbers dating back to 2002, and from 2002 until 2010, we had 1 felony heroin case in Marathon County that our office prosecuted. Since that time, it's exploded. I have, at this very moment, 4 reckless homicide cases pending in Marathon County. I have numerous cases involving the delivery of heroin that were referred to our office by local law enforcement agencies. And really we have not only the trend of the explosion of trafficking offenses relating to Marathon County heroin use, but the amount being trafficked is also alarming. We went from cases involving less than 3 grams of heroin on average to last year, in connection with the Special Investigations Unit, the District Attorney's Office successfully prosecuted an individual for conspiracy to deliver in excess of 250 grams of heroin. And that person received a 20-year prison sentence here in state court. So those are the 2 trends that we see. It's very important not only to look at those effects on the criminal justice system, the people charged with possession and also trafficking of heroin, but as Jeff indicated, the collateral consequences of this epidemic are alarming. Virtually everyone we see in criminal court has some tie to drug abuse as a fuel or factor in their criminal offenses. So really, I think it's quite clear that besides alcohol, here in Marathon County, heroin is, and other opiates are one of the driving problems we have to deal with. Thank you.
Thanks, Lance. Okay, well, you've heard all the scope of the problem, so now we're going to bring up Melissa to talk about what we can do about this and how we can engage the community to tackle these issues.
I'd first like to thank the panel for coming here and helping us with this today, as well as the media and all of our community partners that are here. You know, it's great to see such a cross-section of people that maybe haven't been involved in the work that the AOD partnership does, and those that maybe have been involved for a while or are regional partners. We got people from other counties here too. It's just great to see such a nice cross-section. Our goals for this press conference were simple. The first is to raise awareness on the scope of the problem, looking specifically at the issue of heroin and opiates, because it is really that growing concern. Epidemic is used a lot, but when you look at this concern, it really does spell it out. It's time to address this public health and safety problem. The second goal of today was to engage the community in the work that we're doing, because when you look at it, why is it important? Because we are all impacted by this. We all play part of the solution as well. So we just want to get people involved because, you know, we've seen how addiction plays out. We've seen the tragedies that have come out of addiction, of the different criminal activity that's tied with sales and trafficking. While you may not be aware of it impacting those directly in your life, you know, think of this, make no mistake. Whether it's through your taxes, your property values, or your insurance costs, the continued use and abuse of heroin and other illicit drugs will further put a strain on emergency personnel, lowering property values, decreasing productivity, which impacts our job development, and it increases law enforcement, incarceration costs, and healthcare costs on everybody. Everybody in the room is being impacted by this burden. The time is now. Enough is enough. People are working on this problem right now. I'm here representing the Marathon County Alcohol and Other Drug Partnership Council. We're shortening it to the AOD Partnership. A little bit easier to say. We're a diverse group of over 200 individuals and organizations from across the community working together to eliminate the misuse of alcohol and other drugs in Marathon County. We're attempting to go beyond just providing education because we know we can give you all the facts, but that doesn't make necessarily a change in behavior. We know we have to look at more than that, but we need your help to decrease this burden. In a recent strategic planning session with our AOD Partnership Board, heroin and opiate abuse was identified as one of our top 3 priorities. We recognize that this is a problem, and we are committed to collectively impact this problem. But again, we need your help. It's time for you to join in the fight to take back our community. We need people to get involved. On this resource table out kind of around the corner, we've got ways that you can get involved as far as join one of our short-term action teams. We have one that's specifically working on heroin and prescription drug abuse. Report suspicious activity to law enforcement. Work with them because we know that not one agency can do it alone. Learn more about this important topic. You're taking a big step to coming here today and hearing about it. But learn more, educate yourself, tell others. People need to know. Connect Pushback to your family, your agencies, any organizations that you represent. And visit our new website. We've got a website that just launched, www.pushbackdrugs.com, for ways to kind of get in that mix. We've also got some clings that just hot off the presses. We invite you to take one today, stick it on your office, stick it in your car, stick it in your house. We've got one demonstrated on the window. They look very nice. So as you're going, please grab one on your way out. If you have more places, please share. We're going to be getting more. There's no magic bullet. We know that not one size fits all. To address this issue, funding for prevention, treatment, and enforcement is critical because, as I already mentioned, not one entity can do it alone. We can't expect law enforcement to fix the problems of drug abuse. We have to look at our entire community. What is it that's leading people to choose to use? What is it that's making it harder for their recovery to be successful? The time is now. We can't wait. But we can't tackle this issue alone. We don't have all the answers. We need each and every one of you to speak up and push back against drug abuse and drug dealing. We need to send a message that Marathon County will not be a great place as a startup. Like Mr. Schneck said, it's becoming an ideal place for people to come because there's no competition and all of our drug dealers get along. Well, that's changing. As Jeff mentioned, we've got drug dealers attacking other drug dealers, breaking into their homes. It is not a friendly environment anymore. Raising awareness is the first step, but we're not done. So what's next? We need to know who you know. People need to know about this issue. We have groups of people. I could probably say who in here is ready to go out and talk about this from the AOD partnership, and I hope I'd see quite a few hands. We've got groups of people that are ready to go out to your organizations, go out to your agencies, talk to your boards, talk to your different oversight committees, talk to your church groups, youth groups, whatever it is. We need people to know all this information. And for those that aren't here today and you want to tell them, hey, you should get involved in this, we've got another opportunity on June 4th. It's a Tuesday from 11:30 to 1 down at 212 River Drive, the building right in front of where the kayak racing goes, next to the farmer's market, just in case you're not familiar. We're going to be continuing this conversation from this press conference on the scope of the problem. We're going to be talking about this wonderful campaign that we're happy to be launching here today. And we've also invited some of those families that are impacted by addiction, some of those families that have suffered losses. As already mentioned, Michael Dixon, Ralph, he's over here. I met with him. He's a delightful man. He is passionate. If something good has to come out of this tragedy, he is ready to take a stand, and we need you to take a stand with us. So we ask you, join in the fight to take back our community. The time is now to push back against drug abuse. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Obviously, this is really important. It affects all of our community. We're going to open this up to questions for the panelists, and afterwards, if anybody has any individual questions, all the panelists will be around to answer your questions. So with that, I'll open it up to anybody who may have questions.
Is that the second biggest problem behind heroin?
I'm going to let Gary talk about that. He can talk about the problems. They're both.
It is in this area. I actually was just down in Madison this weekend, and I'm in constant communication with officers in the Milwaukee area. Very rarely do they see it down in Madison and Milwaukee area. Wausau seems to be a huge reason. A lot of the meth that we're seeing that comes to our areas from the Twin Cities, which comes up through Mexico. So the cartels do have their fingers into our area up here too. People don't realize it, or they think that they're very far removed from it. Guess again, it's not the truth, because they're moving that, and then this is a market around this area for methamphetamine. So it's also a huge problem.
And as we track incidents, 79 incidents of heroin in the last 18 months and 55 of meth. So that would be, yeah, that's second as far as incidents in the
In some cases, it's both drugs involved in the same crimes.
a lot of crossover.
Yeah, not a lot of crossover, like Jeff said, but there is some. Sometimes people that are dealers look for any opportunity to make a buck. So whether they're selling meth or whether they're selling heroin, doesn't matter to them as long as they're making some money off of it. But As far as the users go, typically there's a separation of people that use heroin and use meth.
Okay, any other questions at all?
What's being done with the laws that are signed in pharmacies for school? I'm a pharmacist in the area, and I hate to say I'm profiling, but I see the same guys come in like every 3 days and give me 96 of Sudafed. And we run their license through, and the sale was registered. And I just would love to get in a car. I bet you they're going to go to Walmart, they're going to go to Walgreens and Shopko and do the same. Is somebody collectively going through all the stores and reviewing these?
Okay, I can say probably not on a regular basis. Sometimes time constraints, types of investigations, manpower hours. The problem with methamphetamine and when they're getting the pseudoephedrins, it's kind of a strange law. We have to prove that an individual is using the pseudoephedrine. It's against the law to get X amount per month of pseudoephedrins, that type of thing. But there's no crime in it unless we can prove that they're using it to manufacture methamphetamine in a lab setting, or they're doing labs, that type of thing. So they can use the pseudoephedrine, and a lot of times we can go there, okay, it's against the law, we can forward it, but there's really no penalty component to that unless we can prove that they're manufacturing methamphetamine. So the law is kind of cumbersome in that regards. Now, I was just advised this last week, and like I said, I was down in Madison at a conference that I had to talk to, and I was advised that this pharmacy registration looks like it's in the works, that we're going to be getting that, like even for prescription drug abuse, that type of thing. But like I said, with the pseudoephedrine and the logs, it's a very difficult, it's very time consuming. It takes up a lot of our time unless we know that they're furnishing somebody else to manufacture methamphetamine. So, kind of a double-edged sword sometimes when we're dealing with that.
Go ahead. I'll just piggyback on the back of that. Gary's absolutely correct. The law is cumbersome with regard to the pseudoephedrine issue. But not only do we have that, Wisconsin has lagged behind other states in the monitoring with both prescription drugs and pharmacy purchases from other states. So the hope is that with the implementation of that program and the linking of pharmacies and hopefully law enforcement's access to that we could combat that problem. But again, that really would combat the manufacture of meth. Again, as Gary indicated, the reality is in this area, we have a lot of methamphetamine coming from other areas, through the Twin Cities, from Mexico. So that would combat, again, the manufacturing, but we need to address the problem on all fronts.
Could you talk a little bit about local referral and treatment options, maybe especially for adolescents, but then also adults?
That's one of the issues we have right now.
Microphone, please.
It's the mic died. I don't know if Amy's still around. Maybe if you stand up, then.
Well, that's one of the issues that we're trying to address in our community. I know that there's some initiatives like SunoWalks involved with trying to get some treatment options in the schools. And I'm not really sure where that is at, but I know that's been a really big issue that I've had to face in our own clinic, because in narcotic treatment programs licensed through the state of Wisconsin, nobody under 18 years old can be treated. So one of the things that I've been doing is working with the state the past year now. I was able to successfully admit my first adolescent, having to jump through a lot of hoops, but I will do it again if necessary and again. But it's very difficult because of the fact that, when you're talking medication-assisted treatment such as methadone, Suboxone, or Subutex, those are recommended for people 18 years and older. But I will continue to fight that fight to get treatment options for our adolescents in the Marathon County area.
Gary, I think it was you that said that Wausau has become kind of a hub for the rest of the state. Can you speak on that?
Not the rest of the state, but the region up here,
region?
for the northern part of the state.
So Vineland, Romero.
Antigo, Price County, Phillips, Taylor County, A lot of times when we're dealing with a lot of other agencies, they're calling me up, asking me if I know such and such a person. Their information is that, you know, that they're dealing, whatever it might be, whether it's meth, whether it's heroin, other types of drugs. So we're in constant contact with a lot of the regions, and everything seems to come to Wausau, and it goes from Wausau up to the other places.
And what would you suggest that residents do if they suspect drug activity in their neighborhood? Should they call immediately? What should they do?
We have several different tip lines. You know, some of the things that are obvious to some people, short visits that people come. They might be there 2 or 3 minutes, whatever. We do have a couple different tip lines that are out there for them. The Citizens Against Drug Dealers, that's on all of the websites for all the agencies involved in the Special Investigations Unit. They can send tips through there. They can send tips through Crime Stoppers. They can call our office and leave a tip with us if they want to talk. And if they want to remain anonymous, that's fine with us. We don't have a problem with that. We try to follow up on as many tips as possible if it's something that has some substance to it, or we work together with the community officers here in Wausau a lot. If we can't handle it because our workload might be much, we give that to some of the community officers that are out working in the communities to watch for those types of things.
Gary, can you speak to if somebody calls and they don't see something right away, that you're following up, that there's investigation going?
Typically there is. If it's a tangible tip, we do follow up. Sometimes people might get a little frustrated. They don't think anything's going on, but it might be a tip that's on top of another tip that we've done with, like say, Officer Graham from Wausau PD. We might have passed that on to him, and it might be a case that he or Officer Pauls are working on already. So sometimes, like I said, they get frustration. They don't think anything's going on. Well, we have to substantiate the case first before we can take action sometimes. Sometimes we might get lucky, we go there, we see some type of activity take place, we can take immediate action. You know, it depends on the circumstance. But we don't ignore them. We do look at them and try to follow through as much as possible.
Another example of how citizens are getting involved is two of our CSO, our community resource officers, are here, Officer Graham and Officer Pauls. They're keeping track of problem houses in our community, and roughly about 70 houses right now that we have on this list, this watch list, with about 17 of them approximately are actually chronic nuisance houses that we are tracking. And so that's how, and that's neighbors, that information mainly is coming from neighbors. So they're getting involved and are wanting us to impact their neighborhood and rid of the crime and other nuisance properties. So we are making an impact.
And just to touch on that, one thing that people can always do is don't hesitate to call the dispatch center and send a squad. Don't just wait and write the information down. That's great if you have some long involved stuff that you're tracking, or you know a neighbor who's got a history. But if you see a suspicious vehicle parked there and this is a recurring issue, don't hesitate to call. We'll send a squad over there, and a lot of times they're going to, a lot of these people who are dealing drugs have warrants and, are revoked, and things that give us an opportunity to intercede right away. And if we're able to locate drugs, we're going to make an arrest on the spot. So we get a lot of people that come through the tip lines or come through the websites and say, I saw this, and call when it's occurring so we can have an officer get over there right away.
I've heard a lot of startling numbers today. 76 new people entering treatment and so forth. 70 drug houses. Do you think these numbers at a higher level, how many are in treatment, how many do you assume have this problem with untreated misconduct? Several hundred thousand? What's the big number?
It's tough to calculate. One of the things that we look at too, when he talks about the overdoses and people who are coming into the hospitals and the overdose tests, but we're also seeing, rescue squads are providing Narcan to a lot of patients on the street that we don't even have any knowledge of, and those are usually related to heroin overdoses. The medical field is evolved enough to where, what would have been a death, 15 years ago, now these people are getting Narcan by paramedics on the street and they're surviving. And because it's a medical issue, they don't have to report that to law enforcement. So the numbers of people using and actually overdosing on this is dramatically more than what we can quantify.
And I'll just add to that, Narcan is actually handed out to individuals in the community. And not only do we have the issues where fire department or emergency personnel are providing Narcan and people are not transported to the emergency room. We have a lot of people who are actually addicts who are carrying around Narcan just referenced in court yesterday that one of the defendants that made an appearance indicated that she carried Narcan around with her because she knew that her or one of her friends was going to overdose at any given time. So it's a community problem that's being dealt with not only by emergency personnel and law enforcement, but there's a lot of intervention by other addicts in these problems that we're having.
Deb, did you have anything you wanted to add? Maybe a treatment question?
Well, and what you're talking about, you guys, is exactly what we see and what we hear from our patients. We hear over and over again about, like you said, carrying Narcan, having it on their person, and to me that's a blessing because again it's saving a life. But like you're talking about, we don't really know because we only see the tip of the iceberg. But the reality is it's so much bigger than what we're seeing because of that. Because they don't have to be transported to the hospital. But I hear that on a regular basis from our patients that they have watched people overdose or they have overdosed and they've been brought back because of the Narcan. So we are only seeing the tip of the iceberg.
I guess to all of you who spoke about Narcan, is Narcan kind of a double-edged sword? I mean, there have been reports of people going to the limit of an overdose because they know they have Narcan and they know they can save themselves. So is that kind of a solution to a problem but creating another problem in itself if it's handed out?
The short answer is yes. It is.
I mean, how do you regulate the positives of it? Because it is positive. I know a lot of addicts that have seen people die from it right in front of them and have wanted to help them. But how do you work against people going to that limit because they know they can survive?
Okay, we've had investigators in our unit during some of the interviews, individuals that we've arrested have told us that one in particular just a couple weeks ago that she ended up taking Narcan 3 different times that week that she had it available to her. We've had individuals that have told us that are dealers, and I know it's a case that Lance here prosecuted, that it was an overdose death case that he prosecuted last year or is still in the process of, and the statement that one of the individuals made was, you know, it's good for business when somebody overdoses because then they know the product's good, then the addicts out there know the product is good. That to me is a very revolting statement and very telling on how, or what the mentality of an addict is sometimes, on how they feel that, hey, that's good stuff, then I can get some of that. But then they're using the Narcan to keep bringing themselves back, you know, when they feel themselves getting to the edge.
Sure. And that's a powerful statement that when I prep cases and I deal with the addicts, they tell me, I mean, really what they're doing is they're chasing that high, and as troubling as it is, they'll tell you, I want to be as close to death as possible. That's the best high. And so Narcan, I certainly agree with what Deb said. I think it is a blessing. We'd have a lot more people who wouldn't be with us if we didn't have that being readily available. Whether or not Narcan being available is causing people to push the limit, I think the nature of addiction with heroin is such that if anyone has the opportunity to talk to anybody, they're going to be chasing that high to be as close to death as possible, regardless of whether or not they have Narcan. So I think that's just the nature of the addiction.
Jeff, can you speak to the cost of heroin, how it's so readily available to the young, and what other addicts are doing to get the younger generation to get addicted to it?
I can, if I understood your question right, the cost of heroin, the street cost of heroin?
How much does it cost to buy it on the street, and why is it?
Typically, and that's one of the things that we see, typically with methamphetamine, crack cocaine, that type of thing, a gram of it on the street, a gram of that type of drug you can get typically for $100. What we see with heroin is they sell it typically in 1/10 of a gram, which is a very, very small amount. But even with that kind of an amount, we see a high level of purity, unless, like John said earlier, it's mixed in with some other stuff. We don't know what the stuff's mixed with. At least Oxycontin, we knew what Oxycontin was, you know, and what it's going to do. But this stuff that they're cutting on the street sometimes, they're putting some other poisons in there that also affect, you know, the high. But it's been a very high purity of heroin that we've been seeing. And typically it's $50 for like 1/10 of a gram, as opposed to $100 for a whole gram. So that's, you know, 1/10 of a gram is like 10 servings of like comparable to crack or meth. So they don't need to bring up a large amount of heroin to make a lot of money. So it's easier to hide, it's easier to conceal, it's more difficult for us to find sometimes. That's where the use of the dogs come in a lot of times when we're out on traffic stops. So the canines have been really a gift to, you know, the departments, getting us into some of those cars that sometimes we wouldn't be able to find that type of drug or those amounts because it's so small.
Doesn't it tend to the gram fit in the end of the pen?
And pretty much, it's a very, very small amount. So.
And the other thing I'll add with that is, you know, when I'm prosecuting a reckless overdose case, a lot of times people will buy 1/10 of a gram, and that's not even what they're using. They're splitting 1/10 of a gram between 2 people. So you're talking 5 1/100ths of a gram being sufficient to kill someone. So the quantity difference when we're talking about heroin, especially when we're talking about potent heroin, and like John said, you don't really know what you're getting when you're buying it off the street. That's really a striking difference that I see when you look at something else like methamphetamine or even cocaine.
One other thing I kind of wanted to mention, I don't know how much it was talked about or if it has been talked about, this gentleman over here talked about alarming numbers. The other alarming number that we're seeing in law enforcement is the amount of guns that are out on the street nowadays. I know Jeff talked about it earlier with some of the cases with the meth cases, but all of these drug cases, we've seen a huge spike in the number of firearm seizures, felons in possession of firearms, that type of thing. Last year, I know just drug dealers alone, 24 single incidences on stops that we've taken firearms from individuals that are trafficked. So that's a big thing that we've seen a large increase also is the potential for violence associated with the drug dealing.
Is the state leaning towards legal exchange programs, or where are they with that? Right now,
Deb, can you speak to AIDS Resource?
Well, in our community, we have the AIDS Resource Center of Wisconsin, and I know they work really closely with our clinic, not in regards to the needle exchange, but we do have that available here, which, you know, 10 years ago before we opened our doors, if I said harm reduction, I just said what? Because at that time, when we opened our doors, all we saw mostly was OxyContin being stored, among other prescription opiates. Now with, you know, the IV heroin use and the increase of Hep C and HIV, I find that program to be a blessing. Until somebody gets into treatment, it's going to help minimize the effects on public health that can be associated with that. But we also, they have so many other things that they're doing. They come into our program on a monthly basis and are providing free Hep C and HIV testing for our patients so that they know and can be treated, which is really important, again, to intercede on the illnesses associated with their drug use.
And one of the things with the needle exchange program, there's a misconception that just because you're getting a clean needle, that you're not at risk. But what's happening is with these HIV and Hep C cases that have really spiked here in central Wisconsin, directly attributed to heroin and IV drug use, is that they're maybe having a clean needle, but they're sharing the same works. The stuff that they cook or dilute the heroin in, the cotton balls that they suck it through. So there's that cross-contamination there. So even if they're getting the clean needles, they are still at risk, especially when you think of you're getting high, you're probably impaired, you're probably not taking all the precautions that you could. But the AIDS Resource Center is one of those new partners that have been starting to get involved in this effort. They do hand out Narcan to the people that use their program. From what's been reported to me, they do keep some tracking on how it's used, when it's used, who uses it. So there is some tracking going on, but what we need to do is connect with them more. But they are definitely, like Deb said, a resource for that. Yes, ma'am.
How often does heroin addiction really begin with the use of other opiates, such as OxyContin?
Actually, it does a lot, but honestly, it starts way before then. Most of our patients come in reporting that they started with either alcohol or THC. It's the bane of my existence. I like to make jokes about it, but it's not funny. The reality is that it impairs their ability to make good decisions, and they end up, you know, long story short, you know, going down that road to other opiates and heroin. The one thing that we've also been seeing is a very shortening of the window of time between the time that they first start using drugs and the time they get to IV heroin. It used to be that it would be a very long process to even get to heroin, to get to opiates, and now people within a very, very short period of time are going right from these other, like alcohol or THC, right to the IV heroin. There's like no window left. It's just gone. It's just crazy.
Any other questions?
So we know about accessibility and how easy it is to get Oxycontins from prescription form or from buying heroin.
Sorry, well, I missed the question. I was getting. Can you repeat the question? We were having a side conversation. We were getting the question. What was the question?
Is it easier to access and get Oxycontin from a prescription, or is it easier to buy heroin on the street?
I think it's easy to get both. I don't know which one would, which one's easier. I mean, if you know the heroin crowd, it's easy to get heroin. Prescription drugs, obviously, the Oxycontin with the time release, I think that's the thing that stops people from abusing the Oxycontin for the most part, is because it does not have the same effect as a dose of heroin. They're looking for that high, they're looking for that rush, and they get it immediately upon injection of the heroin. So I don't see it as much unless they're able to get the uncoated oxys or kind of defeat the time lapse coating on the Oxycontin. If they figure that out, I mean, prescription drugs, I think, are easy for any of us. Here we probably look in our medicine cabinets, and a lot of us have prescription drugs that maybe weren't used down the road or whatever, you know, so, yeah, go ahead.
And that's really a blessing and a curse of our very successful medication drop box program here in Marathon County. We have 5 locations that are open. 3 of them are Monday through Friday, 2 are 24/7. We've collected, just in 6 months, we collected over a ton of medications. And when they've separated them, it's usually about 1/3 that are controlled substances frequently abused. So when you look at access, access to medications in the home is one of them. And like Gary said, we probably could all look in our medicine cabinet and find something we're holding on to just in case. So we just encourage you guys to use those drop boxes. But that's one of those blessings and a curse. As we decrease access to the pills, they look to something else.
Okay, the speaker's going to stick around afterwards. I know the media probably want a few sound bites. We'll be happy to stick around and provide those. I'd like to, first of all, thank the Alexander Foundation for supporting and helping to fund this program. Very much appreciated and very much needed. And I'd like to thank Kizzy Green for helping organize the press conference. Thanks for coming, and enjoy
Dudley
the
Tower. And Dudley Tower for hosting us. Thank you.
And Dudley Tower. Thank you very much.
Grab some handouts and a cling on your way out. Thank you.
Hey, Greg?